In a world where education is supposed to unlock doors, Maya sits quietly, her heart heavy with a question she can never voice. She's the smartest in the room, but somehow, it never feels like enough. The system that should empower her instead holds her back, whispers that her voice doesn't matter, that her efforts will never be enough, just because of the color of her skin. What happens when a child's future is stolen before they even get a chance to try? What happens when the system you trust to guide you is the one that pulls you down? Is Maya's dream worth fighting for, or will it always be out of reach? Maya, a 16-year-old black girl, has always been the quiet one in class, not because she lacks opinions or talent, but because she's learned to stay in the background. Growing up in a small, underfunded neighborhood, she's always been told to work harder, be smarter, and prove herself. But what does it matter when the system isn't designed for her to succeed? Her teachers praise the others, the students who never have to work as hard, whose families are well off, whose schools have the resources to help them thrive. Maya, on the other hand, feels invisible. When she aces a test, no one notices. When she speaks up in class, she's ignored. It's as if the very institution meant to uplift her is pushing her down, simply because of the color of her skin. One day, after a particularly frustrating class, Maya can't hold it in anymore. She turns to her best friend, Sarah, her voice trembling. "Maya, why does it always feel like I'm fighting twice as hard for the same thing? I study for hours, and it still doesn't matter." Sarah, softly concerned, "I don't know, Maya. But you have to keep going. You're too smart to let them make you feel less than." Maya nods, but deep down she wonders, will it ever be enough? Maya sat at her desk, her fingers tapping anxiously against the edge of her paper. The test in front of her felt like more than just a grade. It was a chance to prove herself, a chance to show everyone that she was more than what they saw. She'd spent countless nights studying, staying up late while others went out to parties or sports games. But here she was, feeling as if it was never going to be enough. Across the room, James, the star athlete who rarely opened a book, sat comfortably, surrounded by teachers' praise. It wasn't that Maya wasn't smart, she was more than capable, but the constant pressure to prove herself was wearing her down. She couldn't help but wonder why her efforts always seemed to fall short. As the test began, Maya dove into the questions with determination. She worked quickly, confident in her preparation. Her pen moved swiftly across the page as she calculated each answer. But just as she started to feel like she was getting a handle on it, she heard a sharp voice cut through her focus. "Mr. Jacobs," the teacher, sternly, "Maya, I need you to come to the front for a moment." Maya's heart sank. She glanced at her paper one last time before standing up, her legs feeling like lead. She tried to steady herself as she walked toward the front of the room. Her palms were sweating, and she could feel the eyes of her classmates on her as she moved. Maya, quietly, trying to maintain composure, "Yes, Mr. Jacobs?" Mr. Jacobs, looking at her test, frowning, "Maya, you're one of the brightest students in this class, but I need you to work harder. You're not applying yourself enough. Take James, for example. He doesn't even try, but he still gets better results." Maya's stomach churned. Her effort, her late nights, her struggles, all seemed meaningless in this moment. James never had to work like she did. He was always the one praised, the one who could slack off and still come out on top. But Maya had never been able to let go of the need to prove herself, to show that she was capable, despite the obstacles she faced. Maya, softly, holding back tears, "I've studied. I've worked so hard for this." Mr. Jacobs, shaking his head, "You're not doing enough, Maya. There's potential in you, but you need to push harder. You're not the only one here with talent." Maya stood there, feeling her heart drop. No matter how much she tried, no matter how much she gave, it seemed like the world was telling her it wasn't enough. James, the one who hardly lifted a finger, was always the one to get the praise. And she, the one who had been putting in everything she had, was still being told she wasn't enough. When the bell finally rang, Maya walked slowly back to her seat, her mind in a haze. She couldn't shake off the words Mr. Jacobs had said. It wasn't just about the test. It was about a system that told her, over and over again, that she wasn't allowed to succeed, not unless she jumped through hoops that others didn't even have to notice. As the class ended, Maya headed toward her locker, her head heavy with frustration. She had no answers, only the same weight that had been there for years. It was always the same, the constant need to prove she belonged, only to be told time and time again that it wasn't enough. Sarah, gently tapping her shoulder, "Hey, Maya. You look like you've been hit by a truck. What happened in there?" Maya, trying to smile but failing, I don't know, Sarah. I feel like I'm invisible, no matter how hard I try. It's like I'll never be seen for what I really am. Sarah, frowning, concerned, that's not true. You're one of the smartest people I know. Don't let them make you think you're not enough. You are. But as Maya looked at Sarah, she couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how many times people told her she was enough, the world around her didn't believe it. How could she fight a battle when the rules were never meant for her to win? Maya's hands trembled as she sat at her desk, staring blankly at the whiteboard. It was the last week of the semester, and the pressure was suffocating. The upcoming final exams were looming, but it wasn't the tests that terrified her. It was the weight of the expectations. She had been pushing herself harder than ever, but every day felt like a struggle against a system that kept telling her she wasn't enough. No matter how many late nights she spent studying, how many hours she spent in the library, it never felt like she could break through. The bell rang, signaling the end of the period, but Maya barely noticed. She was lost in thought, trying to make sense of the chaos in her mind. She had been ignored, underestimated, and dismissed one too many times. It felt like every step she took forward, the world pushed her 2 steps back. But today, something in her snapped. As she walked out of class, she heard a familiar voice calling her name. Sarah, calling out from across the hall, Maya. Wait up! Maya didn't turn around right away. Her feet carried her forward mechanically, her heart heavy with frustration. She didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to explain why she felt like she was fighting an uphill battle every single day. But Sarah caught up with her, out of breath but determined. Sarah, with concern, hey, I saw you back there. You've been really quiet lately. What's going on? You can talk to me. Maya stopped walking and finally faced her friend, the words she had been holding back for so long finally spilling out. Maya, voice breaking, I don't know, Sarah. I feel like I'm invisible. No matter how hard I try, no matter how much I give, it's never enough. I study, I work, I push myself harder than anyone else, and yet, they still don't see me. I'm just a girl in the background, overlooked and ignored. And I'm tired. I'm so tired of fighting for something that feels so out of reach. Her voice cracked, and for the first time in a long while, tears filled her eyes. She tried to hold them back, but they spilled over, running down her cheeks. Sarah stood there, stunned for a moment, but then she pulled Maya into a tight hug. Sarah, softly, Maya, you're not invisible. You never have been. The world might not see you, but I do. And I know you're capable of so much more than they give you credit for. You're stronger than this, and you've got a fire in you that they can't put out. Maya pulled away from the hug, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. The truth was, Sarah's words meant the world to her, but she still felt that nagging voice in her head, telling her that no matter how much she tried, it wouldn't change anything. She wasn't like everyone else. The color of her skin was a barrier, and it always would be. Maya, shaking her head, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. It feels like every time I take a step forward, the world pushes me back 2 steps. I'm just so tired. Sarah, firmly, with conviction, you don't get to give up, Maya. You've got so much potential. Don't let them take that from you. You're not fighting just for yourself. You're fighting for everyone who's been told they don't belong. You have the power to make a change. You can't let them win. Maya looked at Sarah, her eyes filled with doubt, but also a flicker of something else, something deeper, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Hope. It was a dangerous feeling, a feeling that had been buried under years of doubt and disappointment. But maybe, just maybe, Sarah was right. Maybe she didn't have to fight alone. Maybe there was still a chance. As she walked toward her next class, Maya couldn't help but replay Sarah's words in her mind. The weight of the world didn't seem quite so heavy anymore. She had a choice. She could either let the world defeat her, or she could fight back. And as the day went on, Maya felt something shift within her. She wasn't going to let them win. Not this time. Maya, to herself, with determination, I'm not invisible. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. She walked into her next class with a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to face it. And with every step she took, she knew that she was no longer going to let anyone define her. The following week, Maya felt a fire that she hadn't felt in months. She had walked into school each day carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders, but today was different. The conversation she had with Sarah kept echoing in her mind, reverberating like a gentle reminder. You are not invisible. For the first time, Maya began to understand the meaning behind those words. They weren't just about being seen in the classroom or by her teachers. They were about her own belief in herself. As she sat in the cafeteria, scrolling through her phone, she saw an announcement for a student-run panel about the future of education and the challenges faced by students of color. The thought of speaking in front of people, especially in front of those who had dismissed her, terrified her. But something inside her shifted. Her heart beat a little faster, not from fear but from something else, something that felt like courage, a courage she never knew she had. Maya had always kept her head down, believing that if she stayed quiet and worked hard, someone would eventually notice her. But now, as she read the flyer, she realized something powerful. It was time for her to stand up, to demand a space for herself in the conversation. The thought of speaking in front of a room full of students was overwhelming, but she could feel her hands shaking not from fear, but from something else, her own strength rising up from deep within. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. Maya, to herself, quietly, I am enough. I don't need their approval to prove my worth. The next day, Maya walked into her classroom with a new sense of purpose. She no longer felt like she was just going through the motions. She knew she had a voice, and this time, she was going to use it. She sat down at her desk, opened her notebook, and began writing. By the time the bell rang, signaling the start of the class, Maya had written a speech, a powerful one, about how the education system failed students like her, how they were overlooked and underappreciated, and how the color of their skin often determined whether they would be seen as worthy of opportunities. She wrote with a conviction that surprised her. This wasn't just about her. It was about every student of color who had ever felt invisible, who had been silenced by the system. When the teacher called on her to present, Maya stood up without hesitation. Her heart raced, but there was no doubt in her mind. This was her moment. Maya, with quiet but firm resolve, I'm not here to make excuses for why I struggle. I'm here to speak the truth. The truth that students like me who are Black or Latino or Indigenous are forced to fight harder just to be seen. We don't have the same opportunities, the same resources, or the same support. And we don't get the same chances to shine. But we deserve better. We deserve the chance to succeed, without having to jump through hoops that others never have to face. Her voice shook at first, but with every word, she grew stronger. The room was silent, every student listening intently. Maya could see the looks on their faces. Some were surprised, some were thoughtful, but others were moved. Her heart swelled with a feeling she had never known before, empowerment. Maya, pausing, looking around the room, it's time for a change. We're not going to wait for someone to give us a seat at the table. We're going to build our own table, and make sure that everyone who has been overlooked has a place to sit. The room erupted into applause. Maya stood there, stunned for a moment, but then a sense of peace washed over her. She had spoken her truth, and it had been heard. The voices of those who had been silenced were no longer invisible. After class, Maya's friends gathered around her, congratulating her on the speech. Even James, who had always been the golden boy of the class, gave her a nod of approval. James, grinning, a hint of respect in his voice, that was impressive, Maya. You've got guts. I never knew you had it in you. Maya smiled softly, but inside, she felt a surge of pride. She had done it. She had found her voice. And for the first time in a long time, she knew that she had the strength to speak up, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever felt invisible. Maya, to Sarah, quietly but with a smile, I'm not invisible anymore. Sarah, grinning, giving her a high five, I knew you weren't. Welcome to the real world, Maya. You're a force now. And Maya knew deep down that she had changed. The girl who had once stayed in the background, the one who had feared speaking up, had transformed into someone who understood her own power. And that, she realized, was the beginning of everything. The days following Maya's speech felt like a whirlwind. She had never experienced anything like this before. For the first time in her life, Maya felt like she had made an impact, that her voice had been heard. The applause, the compliments from her classmates, even the nod of approval from James, it all felt like a dream. But it wasn't just the applause that made her feel victorious. It was the realization that she had spoken her truth, that she had finally found the courage to stand up for herself and for others who had been silenced. Walking through the hallways the next day, Maya noticed something different. The students who had once ignored her now gave her knowing looks, some even offering smiles. There was an energy around her that she had never felt before, a sense of power and respect. She wasn't invisible anymore. She had claimed her place in this school, and for the first time, she truly felt seen. But as much as Maya wanted to bask in this newfound sense of accomplishment, there was still a part of her that felt uneasy. The speech had been a victory, yes, but it was only the beginning. She knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy, that there were still hurdles to overcome, and there would always be those who would try to undermine her. She couldn't afford to get complacent now. Her fight for equality, for opportunity, had only just begun. As she sat in her next class, she couldn't help but notice Mr. Jacobs, the same teacher who had criticized her so harshly before. He was staring at her, but this time, it wasn't with disdain, it was with something else. Respect? Maya wasn't sure, but it was different. She straightened up in her seat, determined to prove that this moment wasn't just a fluke. This was her time. After class, Sarah caught up with her, her face beaming with pride. Sarah, grinning, "You were amazing, Maya. I can't believe you did it. You really made them listen." Maya, smiling softly, "It feels unreal, you know? Like I'm finally being seen for who I really am." Sarah, nodding, "And you're going to keep going, right? You've got so much to say. Don't let this be the end." Maya paused for a moment, looking around at the students who were now smiling at her, who were nodding in acknowledgement. But the reality of the situation began to sink in. She wasn't just standing up in front of her classmates anymore. She was challenging the very system that had tried to silence her, and that wasn't something that would be accepted by everyone. Later that week, Maya received an unexpected invitation, a meeting with the principal, Ms. Williams. Her heart sank at the thought. She had no idea what this was about, but she knew it couldn't be something good. She had spoken out, and now she was waiting for the consequences. When she entered the principal's office, Ms. Williams greeted her with a cool, but not unfriendly smile. Ms. Williams, gesturing to the chair, "Maya, thank you for coming in. Please have a seat." Maya sat down, her mind racing with the possibilities. Was she in trouble? Had they finally decided to silence her? Ms. Williams, leaning forward, "I wanted to talk to you about your speech. It was quite impactful. But I also want you to understand that not everyone agrees with what you said. You've sparked some strong opinions, and there are some who feel uncomfortable with how you're challenging the status quo." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She knew there would be backlash, but hearing it directly from the principal felt like a punch in the gut. Ms. Williams continued, her voice calm but firm. "Ms. Williams, I respect your courage, Maya, but I need you to be careful. Speaking out is important, but it can also lead to division. You must be prepared for the challenges that come with it." Maya, sitting up straighter, feeling a surge of determination. "I'm not afraid of a little challenge, Ms. Williams. I've spent my whole life being silent, being invisible. But I'm not going to stay quiet anymore. I have a right to be heard." Ms. Williams, pausing, then nodding, "I understand, Maya. And I respect that. Just know that the road ahead won't always be easy. But if you're willing to face those challenges, I'll support you." Maya walked out of the principal's office with her head held high. It wasn't the conversation she had expected, but it gave her something even more important. Confirmation that she wasn't alone in this fight. She had already begun to make waves, and now she knew that she had to keep pushing, no matter how hard the road ahead might be. As she walked down the hallway, she saw James again, this time standing by the door looking thoughtful. James, quietly, "You know, Maya, I used to think that standing out wasn't worth the trouble. But after hearing you speak, I get it now. You've got something that can change this school, maybe even more." Maya, smiling, a little surprised, "Thanks, James. I'm just getting started." With that, Maya continued walking, knowing that the challenges ahead were just another part of the journey. But for the first time, she felt prepared to face them. She was no longer the girl who was overlooked. She was a force to be reckoned with. The weeks that followed Maya's speech were not easy. While she had gained newfound respect from many of her peers, there were still those who were uncomfortable with the change she was pushing for. Whispers echoed through the hallways, some supportive, others critical. Maya could feel the weight of the division growing around her. But even in the face of resistance, something deep inside her told her not to back down. One afternoon, as Maya walked into the library after school, she overheard a conversation between two students from her class. They were standing by the shelves, laughing, unaware that she was nearby. Student 1 mocking, "Did you hear Maya's little speech? She's acting like she's the voice of the oppressed or something. What a joke." Student 2 laughing, "Yeah, she thinks she's gonna change the school with that nonsense. Someone should tell her to stay in her lane." Maya stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. The sting of their words was like a slap across the face, a painful reminder that not everyone was on her side. She turned to leave, but then she paused. She realized something important. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the countless others who had been dismissed, silenced, and ignored. Maya, whispering to herself with determination, "I won't let them stop me." She didn't look back as she walked out of the library. Maya knew that this road would be full of obstacles, but she was ready to face them head-on. She wasn't just trying to be heard, she was trying to change the narrative. Her fight was bigger than the gossip in the hallways. The next day, Maya decided to take a step forward. She had heard about an upcoming school board meeting, where students were encouraged to present ideas for school improvement. This was another opportunity to make her voice heard, and this time, she wasn't going to let fear hold her back. She spent hours that night writing her speech, her pen flying across the page as she crafted words that would challenge the status quo, words that would push for fairness and equality in education. She poured all her emotions into the paper, the frustration of being overlooked, the pain of being told she wasn't enough, and the hope that she could make a difference. The morning of the meeting, Maya felt a mixture of excitement and dread. Her hands shook slightly as she walked into the school auditorium, where a large group of students had gathered. She saw some familiar faces, including James, who nodded at her with a knowing smile. But despite the familiar faces, Maya felt a twinge of anxiety in her chest. This was different. This wasn't just her classmates. This was the school administration, the people who had the power to change things. When her turn came, Maya stood up, walking to the podium. She could feel the eyes of the room on her, some curious, others skeptical. But she had made a promise to herself. She wouldn't let fear control her anymore. She had a message to deliver. "Maya, with clear, unwavering voice, we have to do better. The system is broken. It's broken for the students who don't have the same opportunities, who are pushed to the margins, told they aren't capable of achieving greatness because of where they come from, or the color of their skin. I'm here to say that we're not going to accept this anymore." She paused, letting her words settle into the silence of the room. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and she saw faces, some indifferent, others listening intently. But Maya didn't care about the skeptics. She knew her truth. Maya, continuing, her voice gaining strength, "We are more than what society tells us we can be. We deserve to be given the same opportunities, the same chances to succeed. It's time for change. It's time to level the playing field for everyone, regardless of their background. If we don't speak up for each other, who will?" When she finished, the room was quiet. Maya stood at the podium, feeling her heart racing, unsure of what to expect. Would they listen? Would they take her seriously? And then, a slow clap started from the back of the room. One by one, the students began to join in. It wasn't loud or immediate, but it was enough to let Maya know that she had made an impact. She had started something, and for the first time, she felt like the tide was beginning to turn. James, walking up to her after the meeting, smiling, "Maya, that was incredible. You're making a real difference." Maya, nodding with a small smile, "It's just the beginning, James. We have a long way to go, but I'm not giving up now." As Maya walked out of the meeting, she felt a sense of hope that she hadn't felt in a long time. She knew the journey would be long and filled with obstacles, but with every step, she was carving out a space for herself, and for all those who had been forgotten. She was no longer just a student in the background. She was a force to be reckoned with, and she was just getting started. The following months passed in a blur, filled with protests, student meetings, and moments of quiet reflection. Maya's journey had become more than just her own personal battle for recognition. It had grown into a collective movement. She had sparked something, and with every step she took, the ground beneath her seemed to shift. Students began to stand up, teachers started to listen, and even the school board acknowledged the changes that were slowly taking place. But with every victory came another challenge. Maya had learned that the fight for change was never as simple as one speech or one protest. There were long nights spent strategizing with Sarah and other allies, conversations with teachers who didn't always understand, and moments of doubt that crept in when things didn't seem to move fast enough. One evening, as the sun set over the horizon, Maya sat alone on the steps of the school, the quiet of the evening wrapping around her like a familiar blanket. The school had closed for the day, and the sound of distant traffic was the only noise that interrupted the silence. She thought about how far she had come, from the girl who had feared speaking up, to the young woman who had become a voice for those who had been overlooked for too long. As the wind gently brushed her face, she felt a tap on her shoulder. Turning around, she saw James standing there, a soft smile on his face. James, sitting down beside her. "Hey, I thought I'd find you here." Maya smiled, surprised at how much his presence had come to mean to her. It had been a long road, but she had learned the importance of having people who understood her, who supported her. She nodded toward the school building, her gaze lingering on the windows that reflected the fading light. Maya, softly, I still can't believe it all started with one speech. James, nodding, it's more than just a speech, Maya. You've changed things, and I've seen it. People are talking, and they're thinking differently now. Maya glanced over at him, feeling a rush of gratitude. James had been one of the first to truly see her, not as a student trying to fit in, but as someone with a vision for a better future. His words meant more than she could express. Maya, quietly, but sometimes it feels like it's not enough, you know? I can see the change, but I also see how much more there is to do. There are still people who don't get it, still so many who think I'm just making noise. James, gently, that's the thing about change, Maya. It's not easy. People don't like it when the way things have always been gets shaken up. But you've planted a seed, and that seed will grow. It might take time, but it'll grow. Maya looked down at her hands, the weight of the journey settling in. She had faced resistance, had fought against people who didn't want to change, and yet, she had stayed strong. In that moment, she realized something. The journey wasn't just about external change, it was about her own growth. Maya, softly, to herself, I used to think I had to be perfect to make a difference. But now I realize, I just have to keep going. Even when it's hard. James, smiling, placing a hand on her shoulder, exactly. You've done something incredible, Maya. But it's okay to take a breath, too. You're not alone in this. Maya looked up at the sky, the last traces of sunlight fading into dusk. A sense of peace washed over her as she realized just how far she had come, and how much further she still wanted to go. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for every student who had been overlooked, for every voice that had been silenced. And while the road ahead would undoubtedly be difficult, she knew she would keep pushing forward. Maya, smiling, standing up, thank you, James. You've been here from the start. I couldn't have done it without you. James, standing with her, you've always had it in you, Maya. I'm just glad I could be a part of it. As they walked together toward the school's entrance, the weight of the world didn't seem so heavy. Maya knew that the journey was far from over, but she also knew that she had the strength to keep going. The seeds of change had been planted, and they were starting to grow. With every voice that joined the movement, with every person who chose to speak up, the world was changing. And Maya, the girl who once felt invisible, had become the force that was driving it forward. The story of Maya's journey is a powerful reminder that true change often begins with one voice speaking up. Maya, initially a quiet and overlooked student, found her strength when she decided to stand up against the injustices in her school. Despite facing resistance and harsh criticism, she persisted. Her courage to speak her truth, no matter how uncomfortable, sparked a movement that not only changed the way her peers viewed her, but also challenged the very system that had once tried to silence her. The lesson here is clear. Standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it is always worth it. Maya's journey teaches us that even when the road ahead seems uncertain, our voices can ignite change. She didn't just change her own life. She began to change the lives of others who had been overlooked, giving them the courage to stand up too. The support she received from friends like Sarah, and even from James, who once stood in the background, shows how important it is to surround ourselves with those who believe in our cause. For those of us who are older, Maya's story serves as a reminder that it's never too late to speak out, to fight for justice, and to make a difference. Just like Maya, we have the power to challenge systems that seem too powerful to change. It's never about waiting for the perfect moment. It's about finding the courage to act, no matter how difficult the circumstances may seem. Maya's story shows us that the fight for equality, fairness, and recognition is ongoing, and it's something that we all have a part in. Maya's story teaches us the power of standing up for what is right, even when the odds are stacked against us. Have you ever faced a situation where you had to speak out against injustice, even when it felt like you were standing alone? How did it change you and the people around you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss how each of us can make a difference, no matter how big or small. Don't forget to like, comment, and share this story with others who might be inspired to speak up as well.